We begin the second Perek of Masechta Eiruvin, and the Gemara treats us in the beginning to about a blot of Haggadata. Sagt the Mishnah, Oisin passen lebeirois. You can put up boards around a well. So what is this Mishnah talking about? So, as Rashi says, we're talking about a well that's positioned right in the middle of the Reshus HaRabim, and this is a specific leniency that the Chachamim instituted in the time when the Yidden were Oile Regel. They were traveling to the Beis HaMikdash, and they would go a long way, and on Shabbos they would have to stop somewhere in the middle of the Reshus HaRabim, and they needed water to feed their animals. So where are they going to find water?
Traveling on Shabbos?
They had to, they were traveling, but they stopped on Shabbos, obviously. I mean, in a way, this mission is a continuation of what we were learning before. We were learning before about caravans of people that are traveling and get stuck somewhere in the middle of a bikka, middle of a valley, and they have to put up these makeshift mechitzas. So over here, we're talking about people that are Eile Regel. This mission is specifically a leniency for Eile Regel, and there's well water, and they want their animals to allow to drink from the well water. The problem is, the wells are a Reshus HaYachid. They're 10 tfachim deep, and they're 4 by 4 tfachim wide. That's the dimensions of Reshus HaYachid. And then you want the animals to drink, and they're taking the water out into the Reshus HaRabim. You're not allowed to have your animal even do a malacha either. So what's the eitzah? Chachamim made a leniency of putting up pasin boards that are placed in the 4 corners around this Reshus HaYachid, around this Reshus HaYachid or this boyer. Let me mention one more thing about this. Since this whole Mishnah and a lot of this Perek is all a leniency of the Chachamim regarding the Eile Regel, so therefore it's not brought in Shulchan Aruch B'chlal. Because most Rishonim hold this entire leniency was only made for the Eile Regel. But B'zman Hazeh, it's not relevant at all. The Rambam, however, does bring this. As we know, the Rambam brings all halachas, including things that are not negei B'zman Hazeh. So the Rambam quotes all the halachas of this Perek. But in Shulchan Aruch it's not brought. So, what does the Mishnah say? Oisin pasen lebeirois. You could put up boards around the well to turn it into a space of Reshus HaYachid. But how is this done? Arba diyumdin. You put up 4 diyumdin. The Gemara will explain that the word diyumdin means you have boards that are placed on the corners, and each one of these boards is made like a shape of an L. Amma on one side and an amma on the other side. Okay, and it creates this enclosure. Nirin kishmayna. So since it's a shape of an L in 4 corners, they look like 8 boards. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's exactly what it means. Exactly. We'll see in the Gemara. Rab Meir says, Shmeina, you have to put up 8 boards, nirim kishnei masar, that are going to look like 12. In other words, according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rab Meir that is, besides the 4 boards that you put up in the corners, which look like 8, you have to add another 4 in the middle on each side. Okay, in the middle between the boards in the corner, you have to add other ones on each side as well. And the Gemara will explain exactly where and when you have to add it, depending on the amount of space that there is. They have a picture for this. Okay, the picture is picture Kuf Ayin Aleph, you say. Okay. I mean, it's fairly simple to understand. Okay, picture Kuf Ayin Aleph. You see the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rab Meir, that is. Okay, Zog the Mishnah weiter. Arba diyumdin. So according to Rab Meir, you're putting up 4 boards in the corner. V'arba pshutin, and 4 in the middle on each side, which looks like 12 altogether. Goivan, the height of these boards, asar tfachim, is 10 tfachim. V'rachban, their width, shisha, is 6 tfachim, which is 1 amma. V'oivyam, and their thickness, kolshu. Doesn't matter, there's no shear to the thickness. Ubeineyan, how much space is allowed to be between these boards? Kimeloi shtei revakais shal shalosh bakar. It's like 2 groups of cows. So the way they would place these cows, usually when they would be plowing in a field, they would place them in one, I'm not sure what to call it, one yoke that was placed upon all these cows. So according to Rab Meir, most commonly they would have 3 cows that would be plowing together. So you have to have a space over here. The maximum space you can have is 2 groups of 3 cows being able to go through between these boards, which you can see in picture Kufayin Beis. Picture Kufayin Beis actually has two groups of 4 cows. Okay, but over here the first opinion is 2 groups of 3 cows. Now what's the width of each cow? The width of each cow is an amma and 2/3. So if you have 2 groups of 3 cows, that's together going to be 10 ammas. So basically the space is 10 ammas. Okay, so this is, in other words, the space that Chachamim were makel in order to make it comfortable for a person to be able to bring his behemoths in. And we're expecting that a person is going to bring 2 groups of cows to enter in from one side, so that's the maximum space they allowed. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, the space is more. Shel arba kshurais. It's from 4 cows that are tied together. 2 groups of 4 cows that are tied together. V'loi mutarais, but we're not talking about 4 cows entering when they're not tied together, because then they need more space. And achas nichneses and va'achas yaitzis. It's 2 groups of cows, 1 group of cows that are entering and 1 group of cows that are coming out. Right, because it's just to equal it out. If they're both entering, so it would be a bit wider actually. Kapanim, according to Rabbi Yehuda, what's the shear? 13 1/3 amos. Okay, if you take 8 cows and each one is an amma and 2/3, it comes out to be 13 1/3 amos. 13.3. Okay, those are the 2 shirim here in the Mishnah.
Article says it takes more space.
Article
says it's more space when you have them going different this way.
Comes out more space or less space?
More space.
Okay. Okay, say there. Okay, I can look at it later. Now, before I go weiter in the Mishnah, I just want to mention 2 important things that Taisus brings up over here. The first thing Taisus brings up is, if we learned the first Perek, so then you should have a very big question on this Mishnah. We learned that any time it's parutz merubah ala oimid, if you have mechitzas, but the breach, the opening is more than the enclosure, so then the enclosure, the mechitza is worthless. So right over here, what are we doing? We're putting up these mechitzas in corners, and you have massive openings between each one of these mechitzas, and we're considering these enclosures from the corners to making it into a Reshus HaYachid. How's that possible? So Taisus over here says that everything we learned about in the first Perek, that when you have parutz, merubah ala oimid, when the breach is more than the enclosure, that it's a problem, that's only in a case where you don't have these enclosures on each corner. So whatever case we were talking about before, the breach was in a way that you remove the entire enclosure of a corner. But if you have any kind of breach, but in the 4 corners, you have this space of a amma by a amma, which is enclosing the corners, it's going to be fine, Menatayra. It's going to be okay. Maybe midrabanan it won't. Maybe midrabanan there would be a problem in other cases. But over here, Chachamim were mekel because we're talking about people that are oile regel. That's one point Taisus says. Another thing Taisus says that you should have a question from the first Perek is, we learned in the first Perek, anytime you have a partition, a board, an enclosure, and you have space, ear space from one side and ear space from the other side that's larger than that enclosure, so the aver, the ear space of one side and the ear space of the other side is mevatel, what's in between. So over here you're putting enclosures and you have airspace from each side, and then it's mevatel from what's in between. So how does it work, B'chlal? So Taisva says that as well is only a chumra midrabanan. Minat Torah, there's no such a thing that airspace is mevatel what's in between, and therefore that chumra midrabanan does not apply over here when we're talking about people that are oile regel. Okay, just so that I'm sure you had this question because of the first Perek, the stira from the first Perek. Okay, Zok the Mishnah weiter. Mutter lahakriv lube'er. You can create this enclosure very close to the well, but you have to have enough space for the cow, the head of the cow, and most of the body of the cow to be able to be inside v'shaisa to drink. Because if not, we're afraid that the cow will take out the water and bring it outside into the Reshus HaRabim. Mutter laharchik kol shuhu. You're allowed to go as far as you want to create and open to create this space where you're creating this enclosure as far as you want. But then you're going to have to add more boards, because we said there's the maximum space of either 10 amos between the boards or 13 1/3 amos between, so you're going to have to add more boards. Rabbi Yehuda says, Ad Beis Hasayim. You're only allowed to make this enclosure as large as Beis Hasayim, which is 100 by 50 amos, not larger than that. Omru Loi, so they said to Rabbi Yehuda, Le Omru Beis Hasayim Ela Legina Lekarfif. This measurement of the maximum of a Beis Hasayim was used regarding a garden or a karfif, that Chachamim said that more than that space you're not allowed to carry in it. But avalam haye dir, ay sar, ay muktzeh, ay chatzer, if you have a barn, or a sar, which is also a place for animals, or a muktzeh is like a lot in your backyard, which is designated for storage, or a chatzer, which is a front yard. Afile beis chameshes kuren. Since that's a place where there's people living there, people use that space, so over there, even if it's as large as 5 kuren, that is, each core is 30 saw, a large space. It doesn't matter. Afile beis asara kuren, or even 10 kuren, mutter. You can make it as large as you want. In other words, the point that the Mishnah is saying over here is this limitation, that the mechitzas, to be allowed to carry inside, can't be larger than a beis asayim, which is 100 by 50 amas, is only if there's nobody living there. It's like a park. But if it's a place where there's somebody living there, it can be as large as you want. And therefore, Rashi says, there's a discussion here about this in the Rishonim. Rashi's pshat in the Mishnah is, what the Chachamim are saying to Rabbi Yehuda is, regarding the behemoth that's drinking water from the well, the water from the well is good drinking water that even a person can drink from. So therefore it's considered to be a space that even a person could use it. And therefore it's a beis dira for a person. That's Rashi's pshat. Other Rishonim disagree, but that's how Rashi explains it. And therefore the Chachamim say, when you're creating this enclosure around this well, you can make it as large as you want, but as we said before, you're going to have to add more boards to have the right measurement. Not the maximum is 10 or 13 by a third amas between each enclosure of the corners. Yeah, correct. That's correct, yeah.
Carpet, the well, that's it. The carpet has a well in the middle? Maybe.
Yeah, good point. Zok the Mishnah, Zok the Gemara, that is, should we say that what it says in our Mishnah, that you could put up these boards in the corners for a well, and then you can carry there, the behemoth can take out the water? It does not follow the opinion of Hananya. Why? The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, Oisen, Pasen, Lebayer. You can make these pasen in the corners for the buyer, the chavalin l'shayara, and what we learned in the end of the previous Perek, you can put up ropes for a very flimsy mechitza that you make for a caravan that's stuck. But Chananya says chavalin l'buyer. You can put up the ropes for a buyer, for the pit, for this well. Upasen l'be'er. You can put up. Sorry, I went down. Sorry, I looked up and I went down. You can put up the flimsy mechitza of the chavalim for the buyer, when you have ropes that are going in the length for the buyer, avaloi passen. But this eitz that we say here, that you're putting up these boards in the corners, you can't make that for a well. So he doesn't agree to this whole thing?
How do the animals get in or out?
If you have chavalim, so you're going to have to make openings, doorways. You have doorways that they can get in. So the Gemara, no, it's not. It's possible that Chananya follows what it says in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah could follow Chananya's opinion as well. Why? Bayer l'chod, be'er l'chod. There's a bayer and there's a be'er. It's two different things. Regarding a bayer, you're more machmer than it is. You're more machmer than a be'er. What's the difference between a bayer and a be'er? A bayer is just a pit where rainwater gathers in it. And that's rainwater that will eventually dry up. There's a certain amount of water in it. A be'er is the amount of water that's there from the well. Doesn't ever dry up. So therefore, when you get to a be'er where there's well water, so over there Chacham will more makel for the animals to be able to get that well water. When you get to the be'er, so it's not water that's always going to be available there. So Chacham were not makel of when you get to a be'er, when you get to a pit. Okay, so therefore Chananya was talking about a different thing. He was talking about a be'er. Ikedamri, others said the same thing, the same discussion that we just had, but a little bit differently. Midaloi katani. Now, the idea goes even further. Take a look in this Braisa where Chananya is quoted. Midaloi katani. Since Chananya does not say Chananya oimer oisen chavalim lebayr, that you could put up ropes around a bayr, upasen lebe'er, and you could put up these pasen in the corners for the well. Miklal, doesn't that prove the Chananya that according to Chananya, loishna bar v'loishna be'er, there is no difference between a pit of water or a well with water. Chavalin in pasen loy. If you put up a mechitza made from these ropes, then it's good, and pasen, but the boards in the corners is not good. So the diuk of here is actually in the words of Chananya itself, that you don't make a difference between a bayr and a be'er. So the Gemara says no. So the conclusion of the question is, Leime masnisin de loike Chananya. So should we say that therefore Chananya does not follow what it says in our Mishnah? So the Gemara answers, no, afil time Chananya, our Mishnah could follow with Chananya's opinion. Lemai de ka'omar tanakama kamahadale. The language that Chananya uses is only because he's responding to the Tanakama. But really, Chananya holds that there is a distinction between a pit with water and a well with water. By a well with water, he would agree to what it says in our Mishnah that you could put up the pasan in the corners. The Gemara brings another Tana. Should we say that the leniency of our Mishnah does not follow Rabbi Akiva's opinion? That because we learned in the Mishnah later here, Echad be'er harabim. Whether you have a well which is made out in the Rabbim for the public, or be'er Rabbim, or a pit with water that's also for the Rabbim, be'er hayachid, and a well water which is designated for one person. Oisin lahen pasen, you could make these pasen, these partitions around them. Aval boir hayachid, but if you have a boir, a pit of water that's made for one person, oisin lay mechitze gevaya asara tvachim, there you're going to have to make a mechitze which is tall 10 tvachim, divrei Rabbi Akiva. This is what Rabbi Akiva holds. That's what it says in that Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva. But v'ilu hachakatani, what does it say over here in our Mishnah? Lebirais. In our Mishnah says, oisin pasen lebirais, that this whole eitz of putting up these pasen in the corners is only for wells. Lebirais in, only for wells, lebairis loy, but not for pits that have water in it. So it seems that Rabbi Akiva is actually being more lenient than our Mishnah, even for pits with water in it. So the Gemara says, no, afilu teime Rabbi Akiva. It follows even the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Be'er ma'im chayim, when you have a well that has water in it, the psikele, that's a case where there's no difference. It doesn't make a difference whether it's for a yachid, whether it's for a rabbim. A well water, you could always use this leniency. Lo yishno de rabbim, v'lo yishno de yachid. There's no difference if it's for a rabbim or if it's for a yachid. So katani, that's what the Tana of our Mishnah is saying. The Tana of our Mishnah is bringing a case where there's no chiluk. Bayer mechunasen, bayer, which is water, rainwater that's gathered in it, the loy psikele, where over there it's not clear. There's a difference if it's a rabbim or it's a yachid. So therefore, like katani, the Tana of our Mishnah didn't get into those details. Rabbi Akiva will later spell it out. Tana of our Mishnah wants to keep it simple and clear that we're talking about any kind of be'er. One more Tana the Gemara brings. Leime masnisen deloy Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Should we say that our Mishnah does not follow the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava? Also further here in this Pedic. That now we learned in the Mishnah Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava ein oisem pasen. You can't use this eitza, this leniency of the pasen, elo lebe'er harabim bilvad. Only for a be'er that's made for the rabbim, for the public. Vilu hacha ketani, what does it say over here in our Mishnah? Lebirais. It says you can make the pasen for beirais and it doesn't give any limitations. Loishna de rabbim, loishna de yachid. It doesn't seem to make any difference between whether it's for a rabbim or for a yachid. And says the Gemara, no, afilu teim Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, our Mishnah could follow the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. My beirais to alma. Beirais that is for everybody. That's what our Mishnah means. So therefore it follows even his opinion. Now the Gemara concludes with another thing. When you get to the word diyumden. What does this word diyumden mean? My diyumden. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar. The word diyumden is diyu amudin. A board which is double shaped. In other words, it has like an L shape on one side and another side. The word diyu in Aramaic means two, and amudin of course means boards or closures. So diyu amudin, a double closure. Yeah, in the corners, exactly, L shaped. Okay, now that the Gemara brought up this statement from Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar, for the next blot or so, we're going to have a bunch of different things that Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar said. But first, the Gemara starts off with something that's related to this word, diyu. So the Gemara here brings a siman, diyu, lemunda, shvach, zunis, niskalkal, b'mida, shloishes, siman, of the different things that the Gemara will be speaking about over here. So Tanan Asam, we learned in a Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Oimer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol ha-shitin peturin. Shitin are kinds of dates that are not good quality. They're not made for people to eat. Okay, so therefore they're potter from, what are we talking about over here? Dmai. Dmai is when you, Figs. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, figs. So they're not good quality, so therefore they're potter from Dmai. The gzeira of Dmai is that there's a suffix if Maisa was taken or not, and they didn't apply it to this case. Chutz mina diyufre. Diyufre are these kinds of figs, but people do eat them. So now the Gemara says, what is this diyufre? What kind of name is this? My diyufre. Omar Ule. So Ule explains, it's also a combination of two words. Ilan ha'ise diyu Peiris. It's a fruit that gives, it's a tree that gives fruits twice in the season. So the word diyu means twice in the season, b'shana, in the year, in the season it gives twice. Okay, so those are the fruits that are going to be chayiv, the Zera of Demai applies to it. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar says, diyu partzif, with a double face, or two bodies. Panim, panim, face. Ha'ilei Adam Rishon. Adam Rishon had. Shenema acher v'kedem tzartani. The Eibusha created him with two sides, the front and in the back. He had two faces for Adam and Chava. When they were created, they were attached to each other. Ksiv, that's what the pasuk says. Okay, so that's another case where we see the word diyu used. Now, the pasuk says over there regarding Adam and Chava, "Vayiven Hashem Elokim es hatzela v'gomer." Now, the Eibusha caught tzela. Tzela means the Eibusha took from the side of Adam's body, and then he built Chava from there and brought him to Adam Rishon. So the Gemara here is going to bring a machlokes exactly what happened. What did the Eibusha do? And this Gemara here that we're going to learn now, we had in Gemara Brachas almost word for word. Almost an entire piece of Gemara, almost word for word in the Gemara Brachas. So Rav and Shmuel, there's a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel, what exactly happened. Chadoma partzuf. One says there were two full bodies of a Zachar and a Nekeva that were attached to each other back to back. And the Eibusha separated them. Right? That's what Rashi explains over here. That's one opinion. Chad Omar Zonov. Another says, no. There was one body of a Zachar, but then there was a Zonov that was attached. And the Eibusha built the body of Chava from a Zonov. There's machlokes rishonim in what a Zonov means. Some say it means literally, the way we usually translate a Zonov, which is a tail, that Chava was created from this tail. Others say the word Zonov does not mean a tail. The word Zonov, just like a Zonov is a protrusion from a body, over here Zonov means that Adam was created with a protrusion from his body, and that's what the Eibusha created Chava from it. So now the Gemara is going to bring all kinds of questions on each one of these opinions. Bishleim l'mandama, parts of the opinion that says that there were two bodies that were attached to each other. Hainu d'chsiv, acha v'kedem tzartani, that Adam and Chava were created back to back, and there was two bodies that were together. El l'mandama zonov, but the one that says that it was just like a tail, my acha v'kedem tzartani. So what does this mean that there was two bodies front and back? There weren't two bodies together. And says the Gemara, Kidirabami. The pshat of the words Acher v'kedem is a completely different pshat. Like Rabami said, the Amar Avami, Acher l'maisa Bereishis, Adam Rishon is created last of all things in creation, v'kedem l'puranis. And the man is the one that got punished before everything else in creation. Since the person is the center of creation, so on one hand he's created last, as it says that he should be entering into the world where everything is prepared for him. But at the same time, though, he's the one that has the biggest responsibility in the world, so therefore he gets punished first. So the Gemara now inquires, when exactly did the man get punished first? Is the fact that he's created last that we understand. Lo yivri ad ma'ila shabbata. Adam Rishon wasn't created until Friday, out of Shabbos. Ela v'kedem l'puranis, the fact that he was punished first. Ma'hi, where is this? Ilay mimshum klala. Is it the curse that happened after Chetei Tzadas? Habetchila neskal nachash, but wasn't the snake cursed first, and the lebeseif neskal Chava, and only afterwards Chava was cursed, the lebeseif neskal Adam, and then Adam Rishon was cursed, so he wasn't punished first. Ella says the Gemara lemabel. By the mabel, it was the human beings that got punished first. Everything in the world got wiped out, and what does it say? May Adam vad behema. First says Adam, and then behema. Another question. Bishleim l'mandama parts of the one that says that there were created two bodies together. Hainu d'chsiv vayitzer trei yudin. Therefore it says vayitzer with two yudin, meaning that there were two bodies created. El l'mandama zana, but the one that says that it was just like a tail, my vayitzer. Why does it say vayitzer with two yudin? And says the Gemara k'der Rab Shimon ben Pazi. The vayitzer is like Rab Shimon ben Pazi says. Rab Shimon ben Pazi. Oili mi yitzri, oili mi yotzri. A person in this world is constantly in a situation where either, if he does mitzvahs, then the Yetzer Hara makes him crazy and tries to pull him in his direction. If a person does Avedis, so then the Eibusher is pulling him. Why are you doing Avedis? So whatever a person does, you're always stuck in a battle between the Yetzer Hara and the Eibusher. So that's the Vayitzer, which basically means the constant battle of a person's life between the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Bahamas. Another question the Gemara asks. Parts of the one that says that there was two bodies. When they were created two bodies of a Zachar and a Nekeva. But the one that says that it was just a Zanav when Adam was created, my Zachar and Nekeva Bram. What does it mean that they were created Zachar and Nekeva? Answers the Gemara, look at the Rabavo. The Rabavo asked the question, Ksiv, in one pasuk it says Zachar and Nekeva Baram, that they were created Zachar and Nekeva. Ksiv, but in another pasuk it says B'Tselem Elikim Bara Isai, that he, singular, was created in the image of Hashem. So it's just one body, not two bodies. So what's the answer? In the beginning the Eibish's plan was to create two bodies. But in the end the Eibish changed his mind and and was only one body that was created with a tail. So therefore, when it says Zachar Nekeva Baram, that was just a machshava. But in actuality, according to this opinion, it was only one body that was created. Another question, Bishlam Lamandama, parts of the one that says there were two bodies, that after the Eibishter separated the two bodies, so the Eibishter had to sort of close up that opening that there was. When you separate two bodies, it creates a cavity. So the Eibishter had to close it up in a way that there shouldn't be any sign from this big operation that took place. El Mandama Zanov, but the one that says that there was just a tail that the Eibishter cut off, what are we referring to over here when it says that the Eibishter closed it up? It's just a small incision when the Eibishter takes off the tail. That area where the incision was, where the Eibishter removed this part, well, the Eibishter closed it up in a smooth way that you shouldn't notice anything. Now the Gemara asks questions according to the other opinion. The one that says that it was just like a tail. So therefore it says, when the Eibishter separated this tail, the Eibishter had to build the body of Chava, because it was only a Zanav. But if it was two bodies, and he just had to separate them, what does it mean that the Eibishter built her body? She was already there. Answers the Gemara, look at the Rab Shimon ben Menashe. The Darish Rab Shimon ben Menashe, Vayiven Hashem Elokim Satzela, Melamed, what this teaches us is, Shekila HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Chava. The Eibishter took Chava and prepared her beautifully for her husband. The Eibishter took her hair and braided her hair and built it up, V'hevia La'adam Erishin, and brought her to Adam Erishin this way. Shekain B'Krachi Ayam Kairin L'Kal Isa Banyesa. In overseas, there are places that they refer to this hair, this updo of the hair, they refer to it as something that is a structure that you build in the hair of a woman. So that's what the Eibishter did. That's the meaning of the word Vayiven. We had this in the Gemara Shabbos as well, by the way. If anyone remembers, the Gemara there said, when you get to doing this on Shabbos, that this is the malacha of Baina. This is considered to be Baina in the body of a woman when you build up the hair on Shabbos. Davar Acher, another pshat, Vayiven Hashem Elokim, the Eibishter built, Omer Av Chista, V'Omer Elav B'Masnita Tani, we learned in Abraisa, Melamed, Shebona, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, L'Chava, Kibinyan. The Eibishter builds the body of a woman to be similar to, like a binyan, meaning oitzer, a storage. Ma oitzer, so you have a storage, you have a big basket of a storage that's used for fruits, let's say. Ma oitzer zeh, rochav mulmata, so you make the walls of this basket to be wide on the bottom, the kotzer mulmaila, and narrow at the top, to be able to hold the fruits inside. As Rashi explains, if it would be the other way around, if it would be narrow at the bottom and wide at the top, the pressure of the fruits would weigh on the walls and it wouldn't be able to hold it. So therefore it has to be wide on the bottom and narrow on the top. Afa isha, so too the Eibishter builds the shape of the body of a woman, rechava mulmata, ktsara mulmaila, wider on the bottom and narrow on the top, kedei lekabel savlad, to be able to hold the baby that it has to hold in it. Okay, weiter it says over there, what does the Eibishter do after he prepares Chava, vayiviel Adam, he brings her to Adam. Melamed, she'asa Kadosh Baruch Hu sheshvinis la'adam erishin. The Eibishter became the shushvin, the unterführer, like by a chuppah, when you have the chasna and kala that are being led by the parents to the chuppah. So mikan, from here you see legadol sheyasa sheshvinis lekotten, that a person that's in a higher stature, a prominent individual, should not hold himself back from going down and being there to help out someone that's much lower than him, like the Eibishter did over here for Chava. Va'al yeira loy, and he shouldn't feel bad about this. Frak the Gemara, Olaman de Omar, going back to the Machlokes here, how they were originally created. So according to the opinion that says Partzav, that they were created two bodies attached to each other. So in which direction was this body walking? Was the Zachar, was Adam walking and Chava was following behind him, or was Chava walking and Adam was walking behind him?
Is this a deeper question?
Who follows who? Maybe. Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak says, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, Mistavre the Zachar Sagi Bereisha. It's logical to say that the Zachar was going forward, but for a different reason, not for the reason you were thinking. The Tanya, because it says in the Braise, Lo Yahalach Adam Achayre Isha Baderech. A person should not be walking in the street behind a woman. Okay, this is a halacha, that if you're walking in the street, don't be walking behind a woman because of issues of tznius. Even if it's your wife, don't walk behind her, you walk beside her, but not behind her. So if you're walking and you find yourself to be together, or walking over on a bridge, you shall kennel its dadim, walk on the side of her, and eventually try to pass her. If you walk besides a woman when she's passing a river, and as the Rishonim say, and Rashi here says, that you look at her and you're specifically going there and you're looking at a woman going in that area where women have to pick up their garments to be able to pass through the river, you have no chelik leilam haba because a person is looking in not sneezing places.
We're here walking backwards.
And a chanami, true. So it's not exactly the same thing, but Af Apikan, the Gemara applies it. Tan Rabbanan, we learned in a Braise, connected to this subject about tznius. Hamar Tzamois, again, this is all, we had all of this in the Gemara and Brachas, mamish word for word. Hamar Tzamois Lisha, a person that's counting money and he's giving money to a woman, miyadai liyada, from his hands into her hands, oy miyada liyadai, or from her hands into your hands, bishvil she yistakalba, and he's doing it for the purpose because he wants to gaze at her. Even if this individual is similar to Moshe Rabbeinu that received Torah from Har Sinai, in other words, he's learning so much Torah, he won't be exempt, he won't be clean from the punishment of Gehenna. Regarding him, the pasuk says, Yad liyad lo yinoke, that money going from hand to hand, in this case from the man to the woman, or from the woman to the man, lo yinoke ra, he won't be clean, he won't be safe from the ra, from the evil punishment of Gehenna. Medina shel Gehenna. Amar Rav Nachman says, Manoyach Amaretzaya. Manoyach was an Amaretz, the father of Shimshon. So he was an Amaretz. Where do we see this? Shenema vayakam vayelech Manoyach achrei ishtay. He walked behind his wife, and we just said that you're not supposed to walk behind your wife. So he was an Amaretz. Maskef Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak asks a question. Elamiata. So if so, Gabi Alkana. Alkana walked behind his wife. Hachanami are going to say the same thing. Alkana we know saw Nevuah. Alkana was a tzaddik. The Gabi Elisha dichsev. Vayakam vayelech achreah. It says also a lashon that Elisha walked behind a woman. Hachanami are going to say also that he was an Amaretz. It can't be. Ella, what does it mean in those cases? Achrei dvareo va'atzasa. Doesn't mean literally that he walked behind her. It means that he followed her advice. Hachanami here as well, Achrei dvarei vatzasa. By Manoach, he was following his wife's advice, not that he walked behind her. So you could follow your wife's advice, even if you don't have to walk behind her, you're the one that goes in the front, but to follow her advice does, yeah.
Anything, it says,
yeah, of course. Kol hashatem alecha shma b'kaila. Yeah. Amar Ravashi says, Ulamai Amar Rav Nachman, Manoach ha'ma'aretzaya. According to what we said before, that Manoach wasn't Amaretz because he walked behind his wife, Afila Beirav Nami Lekara. Even what you learn with little children in a pasuk in Chumash, he also didn't know. The Chsiv, it says, Vatokam Rivka v'Narisah, when they were traveling back to come to Eretz Yisrael, so Rivka and her maidens, so they got up Vatikavna like Malim, and they traveled on the camels, and Vatelachna Achreya Ish, and they traveled behind Eliezer. V'loy Lufnei Ish, not in front of Eliezer. Eliezer was never behind them. Rav Yechanan said, Achrei Ari, a person should rather go behind a lion, even if he's putting his life in danger, but v'loy achrei isha, but not walk behind a woman. And the reason is simple, based on what we learned before. If you walk behind a lion, so your life in this world, in Olam Hazeh, might be in danger. But if you walk after an isha, as we said before, you might be putting your life in Olam Haba into danger. Achrei isha v'loy achrei avodas kachavim. If you have an option, if you have only these two choices, you go behind the Isha and not behind Avodas Kachavim, not behind Avodas Zara. Achere Avodas Kachavim, v'loy achere Beis HaKnesses b'shah shemispalin. If you have to go behind Avodas Zara, so then you rather more to do that than to go behind the shul in the time that they daven and not enter into the shul. So we learned this in the Gemara and Brachas. That's where it was brought up, this whole thing there in the Gemara Brachas, where if a person's walking behind the shul while they're davening and you just walk past it, so it looks like you're rejecting the davening, you don't want to go into the shul. But if you remember, we learned over there are limitations to that. That's only if a person's stam walking behind the shul. But if there's 3 limitations. If the shul has another door, so then that doesn't apply. If you're wearing tefillin, it doesn't apply because you show that you yourself are wearing tefillin. And if you have packages and we see that you're going on your way to heading to somewhere and you're busy, so then we see you're not rejecting the shul, you just have to go somewhere. So in most cases today, this doesn't apply. Zok the Gemara, now we bring back the whole Agadata here began because we have a few statements that the Gemara is going to quote in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar, Kol Oysan Hashanim Shaya Adam Rishon ben Nidui, all of those years that Adam Rishon was sort of in a chayrim after he was expelled from Gan Eden. As we'll see in a moment, it was 130 years. So what happened? Haylid Ruchin Shadin Velilin. He gave birth to all kinds of shadim. Shav these names, Ruchin, spirits, Shadin, and Lilin, all kinds of Shadim. Shenemar, it says, Vayichi Adam Shloishim Ma'as Shana, after 130 years, Vayeled B'd Musay Kitzalmai, and he gave birth in his image, which is when he gave birth to Sheis. So what do we see from this? Miklal. So this shows us the Ad or Idna, until now, Lav Kitzalmai Eiled. He gave birth even before this, but not in his own image. He gave birth to Shadim. Okay, the Gemara. Now the Gemara's assumption over here is that how did he give birth over this time with his wife through his wife Chava? So the Gemara says Meisvei was question on this. Hoyer Rab Meir Rab Meir said Adam Rishon Chassid Gadol Hoya. Adam Rishon was a big Chassid. Kivin Shara Sheniknesa Misa Al Yadai. He saw that this punishment of Misa was brought upon him. Yoshav Betainis Meya V'Shloishim Shana. He sat and fasted 130 years. And he also separated from his wife 130 years. And he also, the garments that he wore, did not wear expensive garments, he just had coverings from fig leaves on his body. So this is the way he was inflicting pain upon himself, suffering to do tshuva for 130 years. So what do we see? He had no relations with his wife for 130 years. So how did he give birth to Shadim for these 130 years? So the Gemara answers, you're right, that had nothing to do with his wife. Kikam rinan hahu b'shichva zera de chazalonse. It was the shichva zera, the semen that came out of his body, even against his will. That's where the shadim and the lilim and the ruchais came from. Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar said, Miktsas shvachai shel adam oimrim b'fanav. You only say part of a person's praise in front of him. The kuloi shalei b'fanav. And you could say all of his praise not in front of him. Right, some people do the opposite, but the Gemara says this is the right way. Miktsas shvachai b'fanav. You only say part of the praise in front of a person. Dichsev ki oischa reisi tzadik lefanai b'deirezeh. When he speaks directly to Noach, the Eibusha calls him a tzadik. Kulay shalai b'fanav, and all of his praise not in front of him. Dichsev, not in the presence of Noach. It says Noach ish tzadik tamim haya b'deirezeh. That he was a tzadik, he's a ish and a tzadik and a tamim in his generation. Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar said, what does it say over there by the Teva in Vahine? And when Noach sent out the dove to go, or the dove to go see if it's dry or not, it says Vahine alazayis taraf b'fiyah, came back with a leaf from a olive tree in its mouth. Amra Yaina. So the Yaina was actually saying a message with this. Amra Yaina l'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rebbeinu Shalom, Master of the universe. Yiyu mizaynaisai merurin kezayis. Let my parnasa, my sustenance, be as bitter. In other words, I'm ready to work as hard and as bitter as the bitter fruit of an olive. But it should be in your hands, the Eibishter. I get the money, work myself, and get the money from the Eibishter. And it shouldn't be as sweet as honey, and I'm dependent on other people. Over here it says taraf, that it was taraf b'fiyah. Ksiv hasam, and when it comes to a person's parnasa, it uses the same term, hatrifeni lechem chuki. So we see that we compare this parnasa to this lashon of taref, and we say that a person is ready to have bitter as long as the Eibishter gives him his own parnasa. Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar said, Kol bayis shenishmam by divrei Torah balayla. Any house that you hear the words of divrei Torah being studied in the house at night, shuven enechrav. This house will not be destroyed. Shenamar v'layomar ayeh elakah. You're not going to say, where is the Eibishter because of a destruction. Oisai, the Eibishter that created me, noisens mirais balayla. You have the song of Torah in your house at night. V'amar Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar, Miyaim shecharav Beis Hamikdash, from the day that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Dayai la'olam she'yishtamish b'shtei yosiyos. It's enough for the world to use two letters from the Eibishter's name, right? So that when we say the Eibishter's name, we don't say the full name of the Eibishter, the way it was said in the Beis Hamikdash, Yud Kei Vav Kei, but we only use, it's enough for the world to use two names of the Eibishter. Shenemar, Kail HaNeshama, Tahalul Ka, Halalu Ka. So it's Ka, which is only half of the Eibishter's name that we use the world now in time of Golus, you only have half of the Eibishter's name. So we'll stop over here, but I'll finish off with a connection to this week's Parsha. So in the end of this week's Parsha, it talks about Amalek, the mitzvah of Zachar Esash Asal Amalek. And regarding Amalek, it says, Ki Yad al Keis Ka, that Ein Hashem Shalom, Ein Kisei Shalom, until Mashiach comes, we only have half of the Eibishter's name, which is Yud Kei. When Mashiach comes, the Eibishter will bring us back the full name of his name, Yud Kei Vav Kei.